Greetings once again to all my fellow watch enthusiasts across YouTube and Facebook and wherever else this video might be seen. The other day I had an idea for something different. You've seen all my watch videos and they're all unboxing videos, and that gets boring doing the same thing over and over. And I'm not made of money. I can't keep buying watches to make new content. And since no watchmaker or dealer is willing at this point to send me watches, hint, hint, I came up with an idea, what I'm going to call my For Life series. Watch for Life series. I don't know how many I'm going to do. I may only do a couple, and this will be my first attempt at that. And what I thought to myself is I have in my collection a few, not many, but a few what I call vintage watches. I'd say vintage being defined as anything, say, earlier than 1980 is a good round. 1975, 1980. I mean, this is 2018, so a 1975 watch is going to be over 30 years old, if I do the math right. 85, 95, 205, 250. Over 40 years old, actually. So I'm sorry. I'm not good at math. Sue me. And my recent purchase of this vintage Squale here got me to thinking about that idea. And I thought I'd just make a video, kind of talk about why I like vintage watches to a certain extent and what makes them appealing to me. So, what the heck. And as I see here, I have not all my vintage watches, but a good assortment. I have here, I have a Doxa, one of their subs. This one, according to Doxa's records, dates from 1968. So a very vintagey, if I may use that fake word in context, a very vintagey Doxa dive watch. Right here, I have a Bulova. It's one of their Accutrons. This is called a Space View, for obvious reasons. Now, an Accutron, as you may or may not know, is a type of watch that predates the quartz watch. It's an electronic watch, and it uses, as you can see, on the left side around the 9 o'clock area, actually extending from 10 o'clock all the way down to 7, is a tuning fork. And it uses the vibrations of that tuning fork, and I'm oversimplifying here, to synchronize the timing, much like a quartz watch uses the oscillations of a quartz crystal. But this was so accurate that it was actually certified. I don't have one right now, but it was certified by the railroad for use by their conductors for timing. So a very accurate electronic watch that predates the quartz watch. And I have another Accutron, one of their astronaut GMTs. Everyone thinks GMT, GMT, big deal, right? Well, GMT's been around for, this one dates from about 1967. If my memory serves me correctly. This one, 1965. And of course, I recently acquired this and did a unboxing video of it. It's a Squale 30 atmosphere Baby Master, measuring at a earth-shattering 33.5 millimeter diameter. And it dates from 1969. Now, all these watches have good significance to me. This one happens to be the first what I consider a serious watch I collected. I literally stumbled upon this one on eBay and was just intrigued and enamored with that watch face. I mean, I love all things mechanical, and this thing just spoke to me and said, "Look at this," and I just fell in love with it. I bought it at a good price. It's been recently repaired and tuned up by Robert Piker from mybob.net. He specializes in repairing, rebuilding, and restoring Accutron watches. If you have Accutron watches that don't work or need restoration or need repair, mybob.net. And his email is bob@mybob.net. Very simple. He responds quickly to emails, and he is excellent at what he does. And as a matter of fact, I bought this watch. He also sells Accutrons, by the way. He sells restored, valuable Accutron watches and clocks. And I bought this one off of him because I just loved this early GMT. I'm sure there were GMTs even before this one, but this is my earliest GMT. And as you can see, it is in beautiful, beautiful condition with an original Accutron Jubilee bracelet. Not an inexpensive watch, but a solid piece. Now, the thing about most vintage watches, this being an exception, is they're obviously older, come from a different era, a different style, and they are obviously smaller. This one, actually, most people think this is a relatively new watch. No, this is a 1968 Doxa. It is actually what they call a Sea Rambler. And as you can see, it says right there, sub 300T Sea Rambler, and it is scribed with the U.S. Divers Aqualung logo because Doxa does promotions with dive-related businesses and folks from time to time. I found this one on eBay, and in my opinion, the amount of money I paid for it, I stole it from the guy, and I don't feel bad at all about it. It was his watch. He should have known better. But, it wasn't cheap, don't get me wrong, but it was cheaper than it should have been, and I was very happy to acquire it. It had a cheap band on it. I later found a actual Doxa Beads of Rice bracelet from an indeterminate vintage and put it on this watch, so it has the period correct, I should say, Doxa vintage Beads of Rice band. And it is a big watch for its era. I mean, in the 60s, this watch was probably shocking. Now let's pull out. Let's open this up. Measure the case at for the time, earth-shattering 43.3 millimeter case, and the bezel measurement is call it 37.3 for the bezel. So for its era, I mean, this watch, say, I don't want to say 60s, late 60s. This one more like what is normal for that era, and it comes in at 35.3, so roughly the same size as this diver. Pretty close. But these watches are more typical of a size for that era. This one may be a little bigger, but this one probably shocked a lot of people. And as you can see, I actually have a more modern Squale 1521, and it's comparable to the Doxa, although this watch is from this era, this century, this decade, and this one is, probably 50 years older, and they look pretty much the same size. So not all vintage watches are going to be small, is what I guess what my point is. But here's two watches from the same company, and this one is a 42, I believe, and this one is 35. Big difference in the eras. And they wear differently too. I mean, let's slide on this astronaut, and on my 7.5-inch wrist. By the way, when I bought this, it came to me with its original bracelet, and it fit. Didn't have to size it, didn't have to take a link off or anything, and it fit, but it's just barely fitting. I mean, it's a little tight, it's not uncomfortable, but if I had needed another link or so, I would have been in big trouble. Would change the band, and the band is half the watch on this particular watch, but it fits really well, and it's a watch I could wear almost every day and not look ridiculous with a 7.5-inch wrist and a small watch. But like say my Space View here, it's a little hard to strap this on without looking at it off camera, so I won't do that. But as you can see, that's pretty small on my wrist. Doesn't look out of place, and it really would actually make a very good dress watch. It's not really a dress watch, but it has the thinness of a dress watch compared to modern stuff. And it works, but it is very small. And this one is too. It's passable, and I love this watch. I mean, it's a great pickup for me. And thanks once again to my friend Parker off of the Squale Facebook group. But it is definitely a small watch, and smaller than compared to, say, my 1521, which I love dearly. I mean, this blue is just striking. And this watch just is obviously what the modern size is in 2018. I understand from other watch review channels that the trend now is for watches are getting a little smaller, and some people like that, some people don't. I don't really have an opinion on that right now, because my size range for me personally that I seem to like is in the 40 to 42, 43 range. Anything bigger than that I generally don't wear, with the exception of one or two watches that I have. But I wanted to show you with this video why I like the vintage watches and how they stack up to a modern day watch. Obviously my Doxa, and I have other Doxa subs, and they are all the same size as this one. So it looks like Doxa with their subs didn't change their case design very much in terms of size and diameter from this era all the way up through the modern era. Some of the really newest ones, the case designs are more round. They don't have this overhang, and they've gotten a little bigger, say in the 44 range. But for the most part, Doxa didn't change their design very much through the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, the 2000s. For the most part. I mean, obviously there are exceptions, and I'm sure I'll get lots of comments about how wrong I am. But as you can see, Squale, even though this case is smaller than this case, I mean, the lug shape, the shape of the case is very similar. The lug shape is very similar. The roundness is very, the lug width, the way the lugs land is similar. The coin edge bezel, very similar. Obviously, this one has an acrylic domed crown, and this one has a flat sapphire crown. Sorry, domed acrylic crystal. This one has a flat sapphire crystal. But you can see the heritage. And you can even see the heritage in these Bulovas. You should. I mean, they're from roughly the same era. But as you can see here, what I'm trying to show you is the evolution of vintage from here to here. Obviously, we've gotten bigger. And this is, and I also want to show you why I like these vintage watches. Yes, they're smaller. Yes, they look a little small on my wrist. But you gotta love them. I mean, they are part of the horological heritage. I mean, the Bulova alone, I could do just on Bulova alone. You could do on the horological history of how the Accutron moved the quote unquote needle forward and helps to create the modern era that we enjoy now with the quartz watches. And they came up with a whole new level of accuracy. So there's history here on my little white cloth. And there's beauty. And there's functionality. And that's why I love not only the modern watches, but I love my vintage watches too. So I'm going to wrap up my Watch for Life episode 1, vintage watches. And thank you for watching, and humbly request that you give me a like on the video if you liked it. Comments down below, always welcome. And consider subscribing, because I think I'm going to do a few more of these Watch for Life videos using watches from my own collection. See if I come up with an idea or two and go from there. So, I want to thank you for stopping by and watching, and I'll see you later.